but it all tied in together so perfectly. Today, I want to share with you a little bit about a woman who made a huge impact in my life, my grandma. And 4.5 years ago, when she was on the way to church on a Sunday evening, her and her best friend, she was 77 and her friend was 84, they were on their way to church and there was a car accident and she went to be with Jesus. And you know, I remember when we got the phone call, we were gone that day, but when we got the phone call and I rushed to the hospital, I mean the phone, actually we had it on our answering machine. So when I got to the hospital, everybody had left, but my dad had found out I was coming and met me there. And I remember him walking through the door and me, you know, saying, you know, I thought she was okay. All I heard that there was a car accident. I came out and told the lady, you know, I'm here and my grandma's in an accident. I just want to make sure everything's okay. And she just said, oh, look, I think there's family here. So I'm thinking, oh, they're back with grandma. It's going to be okay. And I remember my dad walking out and he just shook his head and he said, she went home. I can just remember that point. She went home. She's home. That's where she wanted to be. And that night we went back over to my mom and dad's house and you know, I was the one that took the phone calls. I don't think it had really hit me yet, you know, so I was the one taking the phone calls. Yeah, we loved her, and yeah, you know, she's home with Jesus, you know, and everything seemed fine. Then I got ready to leave that night about midnight, and I looked over, and there was a present sitting on the ground. And I remember she called me and said, oh, I left Kelsey's present. Kelsey was turning 4, her birthday present, down, you know, I left it at your mom's house. My mom always had a little pile by the door for each one of us kids when we came there if there was anything we needed to take home. So as I got ready to go, I picked up that present and put it in my car. And when I got home and I unloaded the car and I sat down and everybody was in bed and it was quiet, I sat alone on my couch and I grabbed the present and I looked at it. And I brought that present today because it really represents who my grandma was. Pearly, huh? You know, I remember looking at this and I just started cracking up because I'm sure she's had this paper for a very long time. But my grandma never wasted anything. She was brought up in the Depression and she used everything, and some of you know what I'm talking about. She used everything she had. Now there's no tape on this gift. It was wrapped just like Little House on the Prairie, you know. They just take the yarn, they kind of fold everything under and take yarn and tie it. So I remember sitting there and I just cracked up because this represents my grandma. You know what? How she just never wasted anything. She was very conservative. And why go spend good money when you've got this beautiful wrapping paper? And so I sat there on the couch and I got a kick out of it. And as I sat there, you know, it was my daughter's present, but I thought, I gotta see what's inside this. I gotta see what's inside this. So I carefully untied it and I laid it open just as she had wrapped it, the exact way she had wrapped it. And as I opened it up and I started looking at it, I started cracking up. I was just sitting, you know, it's funny because you're like crying, but you're laughing at the same time. And it's a set of bookends. And there's little porcelain kids on either end of these bookends. And her sight was going, and so it was like really dusty. I mean, really dusty. I'm like, oh, Grandma. I mean, if she only knew, she couldn't see anything. But you know what was funny is one of the heads, the doll's head had been cracked. And she had taken glue and glued it. She totally got it on crooked. So here's this like poor little child with a crooked face. And I just sit there and cracked up because my grandma, what that said to me is my grandma, when she saw that, I can see her. I can see her now going, that's the most beautiful thing. Kelsey would love it. She could put her books in it. And all it needs is a little bit of glue. And it'll be beautiful. I mean, I can see her. And that's what she did. She glued that head and it's crooked. And it's the most beautiful gift she could have given me because it represented who my grandma was. She never looked at things for face value. Oh, it can always be fixed. And always look at the beauty. Look at the colors. It's so bright. It's beautiful. And that really hit me when I went to her funeral a few days later when I got there. And my grandma was not a well-known person. She was, in fact, very quiet, unlike me. She was a very quiet, conservative person. And when I got to the funeral, we were there early, and I started looking around and watching different family and friends come in. And it was pouring down rain in Southern California. And if you know anything about rain in Southern California, most people don't go out. It's not like here. Things stop because they get flooding and stuff real bad. But it was just pouring down rain. And people started coming and coming and coming and coming. I remember looking around thinking, where did all these people come from? How does she know all these people? They had to open up the balcony, and there were people coming up there. They had people standing outside with umbrellas, waiting to get in to see her. And as I sat there and I looked around, I saw people from all walks of life. There were some men that had nice suits on and ladies who had beautiful dresses. There were some that were just in jeans and t-shirts. But what stood out in my mind was a group of men that were near the front, almost on the front row. And as I looked over at them, and I know I was probably gawking because I just thought, what are they doing at my grandma's funeral? These men had tattoos from one end to the other, had the tear thing, had earrings all over, and they were crying. They were sitting on the front row crying. And I remember just looking thinking, oh, Grandma. That was my grandma. She loved everybody. It didn't matter. And afterwards, when we stood there and there were people coming through, saying we loved your grandmother, these men came through. Come to find out, there was a prison ministry in my grandma's church, where she lives in Pomona, California. It's right outside LA. I won't go down there during the day when I'm down there now. But there was a prison ministry, and they brought these men in. They would bus them in. My grandma never cared the way they smelled, what their hair looked like. She loved them because she looked past that brokenness on the outside. She walked right up to them and threw her arms around them. And I remember thinking, God, let me be like that. Don't let me look at the way people look on the outside. Let me look on what's going on inside of these people. And it really touched me that day, knowing what kind of a person. I didn't realize she was this kind of a person until she died. Then there was something else I found. Her brother, at the funeral, had written a tribute to his sister. It's called My Tribute to Bernice. That was her name. And I want to read you a couple paragraphs in this. It says, Bernice, the little candle that ignited a flame, a spiritual flame that illuminated our home for years. At the age of 9, she brought the story of Jesus home from Sunday school. Mom and Dad listened and watched. Then a Christian home was born. God only knows how far that little candle cast its beam. It still burns. It still gives light. It will burn forever. It will never be extinguished. When I heard that, I had no idea that my grandma, I figured she was just brought up and raised in a Christian home. I had no idea that she was the one who went out to Sunday school. And when she got there, they didn't say, oh, we've got to close the class. I'm sorry, we don't have a teacher. There was somebody there waiting that said, come in, welcome. Come on, take a seat. I'm going to tell you something. I got something to tell you. See, guys, sometimes we get these kids one time. That's it. And that has happened more than once. I know sometimes when a child comes in, I get them one time, and I have to make that time count. And that little girl, I'm sure, came in, and that teacher talked to her and shared Jesus and told her all about what God can do in your life. And that little girl went home, and she lived the life of Jesus. And she brought a whole family to the Lord. Now, I want to tell you, the brother who wrote this, he was also a missionary. See, it didn't just stop there. It goes on. When there's a child that gets touched back there, it doesn't just stop there. It's like a firework. It just spouts off. Lives get touched over and over again. Her son's girlfriend at the time was living in an alcoholic, abusive home. There was some yuck stuff going on, and she took her into her home. She said, you live with me. I'll take care of you. Took her to church with her every Sunday. That woman grew up to teach for over 25 years, is still teaching. And she has done day camps, she has done just all kinds of stuff, done worship with kids. She's been the CD director at church, all because that woman said, you come into my home. I'm not going to say, hey, listen, your mom's an alcoholic, you need to stay away from my son. She said, come on in. That woman's also my mother. I'm a product of my grandmother. You see, when we touch lives, that's just the beginning. Whether you're back there and you're holding that brand new baby for the first time and you're singing, Jesus loves me, this I know. Jesus loves you, baby. We are the arms of the church. We don't babysit back there. We love whether they're a brand new baby being brought into this church. One of the most awesome sights I ever saw was when I went and hung out in the 2- and 3-year-old class about a month ago with Ed and Virginia Smith, and I sat there and watched Ed sit on the floor and these kids get all over him. Now, did they love him because he was some awesome teacher? No. They loved him because he had a caring heart and he was there with open arms to say, I'm here, love ya. And the little girls that would go plop up on his lap, Teacher Ed, let me tell you about what happened to my dog. I mean, they were doing it and I was just going, oh my gosh. They absolutely love him. But you have to have that willing heart and openness. You know, something else that he had written was something that touched me because, you know, my grandma, she was never an outstanding citizen or did a lot. But this is what he wrote. Bernice, how she loved the church. She was a pastor's dream, readily available for any job, mostly behind the scenes. She didn't like public exposure. Occasionally, she and Earl would sing a special during the service, but only then with some coaxing. It took no coaxing to get her to take care of the toddlers, bake and cook for fundraising, organizing rummage sales, visiting the shut-ins, or cleaning the church. That was where she felt most comfortable. She would have been miserable had she not been able to work in this way. She never missed any service either. Sunday morning, Sunday night, and midweek, you could depend on her presence. Bernice, part of the name is conquest. No, she didn't conquer worlds. She was not well known. She was not highly educated. She never had a status job, though she worked very hard. She never lived in a fancy home nor earned a lot of money. But believe me, she was successful. Successful in the highest sense of the word. You who know her know that is true. God knows that it's true. One time God said of his servant, have you considered my servant Job? There is none like him in all the world. It would not surprise me if God had not said the same thing of Bernice. There is none like her in